Welcome to the Rarefied Light 2024 Juror Lecture. My name is Bonnie Landis. I'm on the board. And as most of you know, APC is a statewide nonprofit organization. We were formed in 1983. And our mission is to promote fine art photography in Alaska through education and exhibitions. So each year we seek out a nationally known recognized artists to jury the Rarefied Light show, give our public lecture, which is tonight, and then do the workshop. We are very honored this year to welcome the 2024 juror, Aline Smithson, from Los Angeles, but tonight from the East Coast. So she's got a time frame there adjustment to make during the weekend. This year we had 389 submissions by 60 Alaska artists to the cafe call. And for inclusion in the final exhibition, Aline chose 49 pieces by 46 artists. And so that show will be opening at Alaska Pacific University November 1st, and then it'll travel to Fairbanks, Kenai, and I believe Valdez this year. So it'll be there next summer. We just got that word. So it is a statewide show and lots of people get to see it. There are still openings in the workshop this weekend for those of you that want to sign up. Go to akphotocenter.org. All the information and sign up is there. So I encourage you to consider that tonight. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to one of our other board members, Gail Neufeld, and she will announce the award winners.
So we had a best of show chosen, and then we had 5 honorable mention awards chosen as well. So I'm going to start off with best of show, and it is my pleasure to announce that Michael Johnson won best of show for his work, JJ. Honorable mention, Bill Huebner for Matanuska Glacier Silt Stream. I'm sorry. Bill Hess was for Alaska, Where That Lonesome Whistle Blows. Richard Murphy for Freestone Tadpole. Carolyn Strand for The Amazing Yard Statues, and Kerry Tasker for Cloud Chamber. All took honorable mention. So congratulations to everybody. And with that, I would like to hand it over to Petra.
Thanks very much. I'm also a board member at APC, and I also want to just mention thank you to all the people who are here tonight who entered Rarefied Light 2024 and did not get chosen for this exhibit. Please try again. I think most of us have tried in the past and have not made it into the shows at one point or another, and then we just try again. And so we don't want you to be discouraged. Before I hand over to Aline, I just want to say a few words about her. I was very lucky early this year to meet her in person. We've become so used to seeing everyone on Zoom that it was really special. The timing was right. Aline had a beautiful exhibit up at the Brand Art Center in Glendale, which I didn't know. I used to live in Southern California and I had never been there before. And if any of you have a chance to go and see that, it's a fantastic place. It's an art library, music, visual arts, and they have great exhibition space where Aline had her work. And when I was there, she was leading a group of students through the exhibit, her work, and then also some of the work by her students. It was really fascinating. And I think those of you who are going to be in the workshop with her are going to have a really great experience. She struck me as an amazing educator. So Aline, I'm going to read a few lines from your bio because I wouldn't be able to put it any better. Aline is an interdisciplinary artist, filmmaker, educator, and editor based in Los Angeles, California. Her practice examines the archetypal foundations of the creative impulse, and she uses humor and pathos to explore the performative potential of photography. She received a BA in art from the University of California at Santa Barbara and was accepted into the College of Creative Studies. After a decade-long career as a New York fashion editor, she returned to Los Angeles and to her own artistic practice. She has exhibited widely, including over 50 solo shows at institutions such as the Griffin Museum of Photography, the Santa Barbara Museum of Art, the Fort Collins Museum of Contemporary Art, the San Jose Art Museum. She's exhibited in China and also at the Rico Photo Center in San Francisco, the Center of Fine Art Photography in Colorado, the Tagomago Gallery in both Barcelona and Paris, and the Obscura Gallery in Santa Fe. In addition, her work is held in a number of public collections, and her photographs have been featured in publications including the New York Times, the New Yorker, PDN, and many more. In 2007, Aline Smithson founded Lens Scratch, a photography journal that celebrates a different contemporary photographer each day. It's online, and if you haven't looked at this already, I would encourage everyone to go to the website, have a look-see. I've signed up for the daily photography page. It's really fascinating. It's a wonderful opportunity for emerging artists, photographers. And I must say, it's surprising. It's really wonderful. And yeah, I think, I don't know, Aline, whether you're going to talk about Lens Scratch a little bit later on, but that would be really fabulous. Aline has edited for many publications. She's written reviews and forewords for artists' books. She has curated and juried many exhibitions. And she's an educator and has been teaching at the Los Angeles Center of Photography since 2001, and also teaches at a variety of institutions such as ICP, SFW, MMW, and others. And last but not least, she has also made a number of books. So without further ado, I don't want to take any more of your time. We're excited to have you here. Thank you so much. And I welcome Aline Smithson to the Alaska Photographic Center, and we are looking forward to hearing more about you and seeing your work.
Oh, thank you so much, Petra. Thank you, Gail. Thank you, Bonnie. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Alaska Alaska Center of Photographic Arts. Is that right? No. Well, anyway.
Alaska Photographic Center.
Okay, we'll leave it there. And this is really special to me because I was telling Jason, my parents met in Alaska, and they talked about Alaska all through my childhood. My father was actually doing photography in Alaska, and he was doing these crazy shots of giant mosquitoes that he would somehow get into a photo. And I have to dig up that work, but Alaska really has been very special to me. And I was so sorry that I spend my summers on the East Coast, because I would have been there in a heartbeat, but it was just too far to go from Boston. So anyway, I'm going to get going so that everyone can have a decent evening. Okay, let me get here. And okay, all right. And I need to make that smaller. All right. Thank you so much for coming tonight. I know it's hard. All of us have been on a gazillion Zooms since the pandemic. And I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy lives. Tonight, I'm going to be talking through my photographic journey, but I'm also going to keep talking about my love of the tangible photograph, the actual physical photograph that is not on a computer screen. I still am an analog photographer. I don't own a digital camera. I still only shoot film, and my iPhone is the only digital camera that I own. I like to think about photography as a time machine, allowing us to look back and understand our histories. I think the photographic image is one of the most profound objects we carry into the future as a form of proof that we existed. And why is this not moving forward? A few months ago, my husband shared this photograph with me of his father when he was 20, traipsing across a glacier in Germany on a boys' trip, wearing a fedora and a long overcoat, not exactly the appropriate attire to go hiking in the snow. I love this image for its surreal quality, but also, importantly, I now have proof of this day of this person in 1937 on a glacier in Germany. I love this photograph of my father, always a showman, all dressed up in his cowboy finery, singing a song about the West in his deep, resonant voice. I love this photograph taken by my uncle with the Rolleiflex that I now own of my aunt at White Sands National Park in 1960. I share these photographs with my children. I frame them so that my children will carry them forward into another generation. I think a lot about the legacy of photographs, and it impacts my work in a profound way. Photographs, particularly family photographs, are a form of stardust, artifacts that time travel and expand our knowing, offering clues and sometimes offering secrets. And as I get farther along on this journey, I see the profound importance of the physical print, something that will move into the future. I'm a big believer that most of our work comes from the stew of our childhood, the traumas and tribulations, the worlds we inhabited, the dreams we created for ourselves. And when I look over the work I've made in the last 25 years, I can always find the threads to things in my childhood that impacted my psyche in ways I wasn't aware of. I've also, through my teaching, really realized for many photographers, it's a sense of place also. So this was ground zero for me. I consider ground zero when I discovered my uncle's twin lens 2.8F Rolleiflex in the garage. And that camera changed how I interpreted the world. This was the first image I created that I knew I was an artist making work with a camera. That was a big aha for me. I studied art in college. And when I picked up a camera finally, many, many years later, I realized that I could make art with a camera. This was a period where I was sort of locked into being home with children, and I was only photographing the things that were in my daily life. I wasn't going outside. I wasn't able to take trips. I was really being home, being a parent. And I feel like my children have been such an incredible force and inspiration in my work. all my early work was using them as subjects, and they were really wonderful about allowing me to try out all kinds of things. I also shot the people that lived around me, my neighbors. I shot made a lot of work with my dog. I loved this period because I was completely anonymous. I didn't really know any other photographers. I was just making work, trying to figure out how to work with the camera and light and shadow. And so I look back at those early years with a lot of affection because I didn't have anyone to please but myself. I also got really interested in the toy camera and became active in the toy camera community. And it led to the opportunity to be the gallery editor for Light Leaks magazine, which meant that I took all the submissions and then laid them out in the magazine every time an issue came out. And it was a complete pleasure to start working with photographs in that way. I met a lot of my first photography friends in the toy camera community, and it was a really supportive group of photographers that actively celebrated each other's work. And it was the time before the internet. There was no instruction how to use toy cameras at that point. We all were communicating with each other through postcards and letters, not through email. And there was something wonderful to get a postcard in the mail and someone said, "Oh, I loved your work in this publication," or whatever. So these are some of my early toy camera images where I was really learning the quirkiness and the vignetting and the light leaks and the qualities of toy cameras. So I had yet to work in a sustained way and hadn't created an intentional project. I kept hearing, because I wasn't really part of the photo world, I kept hearing about the idea of projects. And it was still the time of the wet darkroom and where people were really paying a lot of attention to an individual photo. And up to this point, I had only been shooting in black and white. And I know this sounds crazy, but I didn't know how to shoot color. I hadn't put a roll of color film in my camera. But I came across a small photo of Whistler's iconic painting, which is actually called Arrangement in Gray and Black, Portrait of the Painter's Mother. It's not called Whistler's Mother, but and I looked at this anew. I had studied Whistler in college, but I really began to look at the composition of this painting and thought, what could I do with this? And I happened to go to a garage sale after I found that piece at a garage. I went to a lot of garage sales, and I found this leopard coat and hat and a piece of leopard fabric. And then at another sale, I found a cat painting, and I found pretty much the same chair that Whistler had used in his painting. And I asked my 85-year-old mother if she would participate with me and work on this project. And it took us 2 years to finish the project. And she died right after, and she never saw. So these are black and white silver gelatin prints that are hand painted. So she never got to see them colorized. But this is the work that really put me on the map. This was hugely successful. It's been my best-selling series. It traveled all over the world. It went to Korea and China and Russia, Europe and the States. And it's so wonderful for me because every time I sell one, I have to repaint it again. And I just love the idea of spending that time with my mom. And she would be completely amazed that this work has gotten out as far as it has, because when we were working together, she said, why would anyone be interested in seeing a portrait of me in a costume? But galleries have told me that they loved showing this work because it was one of the few times that a photographer was working with humor and they could hear people laughing in the gallery, and they loved that. At the same time, I worked on another hand-painted project after looking at formal family photos from the turn of the century and hand-painted Japanese postcards. And I wanted to create portraits of my family and friends that would be cherished, things that would have some gravitas that would move into the future. So I set up a backdrop against my garage at home and sort of styled these portraits. And these also are silver gelatin black and white prints that are hand painted. And this is a portrait, a hand painted portrait of my daughter. And this is that same piece of leather, leopard fabric, and the coat and hat that I got at the garage sale. And my daughter was a vegetarian at the time, and she was like, I don't want to have this. I don't want to be wearing this. So I literally got 2 frames out of her, but fortunately one worked well. And this image went on to be the cover of PDN, which was mind-blowing to me. So that was really exciting. So about this time, the community darkroom where I'd been printing for almost a decade came to an abrupt close. This was 2007. I really see this as a pivotal year in photography. I not only lost a community of friends, but I lost a place of work and creativity. Every darkroom in LA closed. I was really angry with the photo world. I was angry that all the changes that digital made in photography, how it impacted my practice. I couldn't find certain papers. All the labs were closing. And I decided I wanted to make a body of work that spoke to some of my frustration and also allowed me to be way more creative. One of the painters that I loved in college was Diebenkorn. And so I started taking my toy camera negatives and cutting them and scotch taping them together. You can see some of the tape at the top of this image, and adding a few bits of text that sort of spoke to either my anger or something poetic. So this was shot in Death Valley, and it says, not as interesting as it looks. And these are washes of oil paint on top of the silver gelatin print. And I'm still making work for this body of this project. So I'm going to take a little break and just talk about Lens Scratch and the importance of celebrating your community. I have found that I don't want to make this journey all about me, and I love shining a spotlight on someone else. And 18 years ago, also in 2007, I started a personal blog, and as did everyone else. And I would put a photo up and I'd wait for all 3 followers to like it. And it became very hollow to me. I didn't really understand why I was creating a blog, and I was teaching and I was thinking, oh, I can use a blog to learn about other photographers. So for 18 years, we have featured a different photographer every day. We all work for free. I wrote alone for about the first 7 years, and then I started asking other people to be writers. And we have so much on the site. Up there, you can see a bar where it says photographers and features and resources. There's a lot beyond what than just the work on the page. And occasionally we have exhibitions, and it's always free, and I always accept every image submitted. I really wanted to create a space where everyone felt seen. And I was really proud of this exhibition in particular because it was the first exhibition to come out during the pandemic. And this was on April 1st, 2020. And I was blown away by how many people were making work about being isolated. And these are just some of the photographers. These are some of the subjects you can find under the photographer tab. So if you're an educator or you're a photographer and you want to make a project about a certain theme, you can click on any of these, like family or memory or mental health, childhood, and you can see all the projects that have been made in that category. We also are about to announce our 2024 Student Prize winners. This is something was one of my favorite things that we do. We celebrate the next generation of photographers with cash prizes, but more importantly, with mentorship. And I mentor the first place winner for every month for a year. And then we meet with all the winners maybe 4 times a year. We also, during the pandemic, started, this would be under the features tab, Publisher Spotlight. So if you're interested in publishing, you can read all about the different publishers. So there's quite a lot of rich resources on the site. I wanted to talk about the importance of making work over time and making work that might never see the light of day for 10 years. I'm right now sitting in a house on a lake in Massachusetts, and we have come here for close to 30 years, and I have photographed this in black and white and in color and in all kinds of different ways. And at some point, I'll probably create a book of it, but it's the house that we stay in was my husband's great grandmother's house. So there's so much history here. And I make more work every summer. So this was some of the early work when I was shooting in black and white. And then I moved into color. And I don't put this work out usually. Occasionally I'll put out single images, but I'm kind of holding it back until I'm ready for a book. And some years I get maybe 10 really good photographs, and some years I might just get 1 or 2. But when you work on something, oftentimes, and I've seen this with many artists, is that you create another body of work inspired by your first body. So in this case, I did a second series, which was called In Case of Rain, because I started noticing that my kids were spending all their time on their computer, where we lived in a house that was filled with incredible objects and games. And it really made me start looking at objects in a different way. I was looking at old books and looking at the book covers and the kinds of linen and the kinds of colors that were being used, and old board games, and again, the kinds of colors. I rediscovered paper dolls through this series. And then that led to yet another body of work, which was called Child's Play. And I started really having some fun with paper dolls. And this is sort of the classic paper doll family. But it made me, as a parent, start looking at the objects that we give children to play with and how limited they are. It's always a perfect family with a perfect body. Everyone is white. There's no diversity at all in these older toys. So I created prostitute paper dolls. I created 2 dads with their kids, and I just used paper dolls to kind of change up the traditional templates of what we give children to consider. I grew up in Los Angeles, and literally a stone's throw from Hollywood, and I've always loved old Hollywood. I love the movies, and I started looking at a lot of the beautiful portraits that were taken of celebrities kind of from the 40s to the 60s, especially in the Kodachrome era. And I thought it would be fun to do a series where I took people that I knew and sort of gave them a faux sense of celebrity. So I'm shooting as if that they would be a movie star one day. And this series I shot with a Hasselblad and 1 hot light. And that was also a learning experience. I love working with a hot light. And this is my nephew, who is completely covered in tattoos. And I had him wear my husband's shirt jacket for this shot. And my sister was thrilled to have this photo. I also, after this series, I wanted to get back to something humorous. And so I created just a fun little series called Counting to 10 in French. And I am working on counting to 10 in Spanish and Japanese right now. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Then I went through a period, about a 5-year period, of just making a lot of portraits. Again, I'm still working at home. I'm working, setting up a backdrop against my garage. I did a series called Spring Fever of 7-year-old girls wearing 1950s Easter hats. That was all about color and the deliciousness of youth. And then I did a series called Revisiting Beauty, where I was photographing young women between the ages of 14 and 17. This was my first foray into Photoshop, because all of the backgrounds are landscapes that I took either in China or in California. I would shoot the subject against a colored backdrop, and then in Photoshop add in the landscape. But I wanted the landscapes to feel very painterly. I spent 3 years photographing all the marionettes at our local puppet theater. I tried all kinds of different ways of taking portrait. This was a piece of satin where I made 3 holes in it, one for the head and one for each arm, and just tried out things. I made portraits of portraits. And then I was offered a book project through the Magenta Foundation in Canada, a beautiful, beautiful book that they put together called Self and Others. And this was the trade edition. This was the special edition that was orange lacquered. And when you pulled it out, it had a leopard cover. The Smithsonian Air and Space Museum several years ago commissioned me to make portraits of people in my world for an exhibition. And I started thinking about who I wanted to photograph. And I decided that I wanted to photograph all the immigrants in my life. I have a lot of immigrants as students. This is one who came from Argentina. She wanted to dress like Evita for her portrait. And I asked everyone to either wear or hold something that they brought with them. She's from Nigeria. He was from the Philippines, and this is the knife he brought with him when he came to the US. That wouldn't happen today. She was from Korea, and she was pregnant when she came, so what she brought was her daughter. This is my dry cleaner. I mean, everyone I knew, but I didn't know their story. So this series, he's from Iran, was profound. This is someone from Switzerland holding a Swiss airplane. And I shot 21 people and interviewed them and got to know people that I thought I knew so much better. And I had a dinner party at the end of this and invited everyone and asked them to bring food from their country. And it was just this very, very special evening. It was probably the most profound series that I made for me. I was also commissioned to create a book on Los Angeles by Chris Graves, and it was part of the Lost series. And this portrait of my daughter holding her Shack cell phone case was the cover of the book, and it also hung in the National Portrait Gallery in London. But I wanted to show the quirky side of LA, not only the architecture and the people, but just some of the things that I come across in living there. Then during COVID, everyone made work about the pandemic, at least almost everyone I know. And I started thinking about the Saul Steinberg paper bag masks that I so loved, and thinking about how we were masking. And all of this work was made during the height in 2020 when we really weren't seeing each other. So I set up a backdrop in my backyard. I invited people to make masks and come and get on to the no seam. And then I would come out in my mask and direct them. And because they were wearing masks, I would say, go to the left, and they would go to the right. And anyway, it actually, there's a lot of hilarity in this. And then I'd finish shooting, and then I'd go back inside and they would leave. So it was an interesting photo shoot. Another thing during the pandemic, I was in this book called Solace, that was all about making spreads. And so I started working with a variety of photographs, some that were mine and some that I bought on eBay or found elsewhere. And I started putting photographs together. And I thought this was really, really fun for me, especially during the pandemic when we were home and sitting in front of our computers a lot. And I'm going to finish the lecture with some work from the show that Petra mentioned. I had a show called The Ephemeral Archive. And if I look at one subject that I have revisited in a variety of ways, it's really about the fact that we are losing our visual legacy. Everyone is shooting digital, and those images sit on our computers and they don't get printed and they don't move through time. So the first series that I worked on and then changed for the exhibition was this series called People I Don't Know, where I had been collecting, excuse me, portraits of people that I found at flea markets or at Goodwill or wherever. And I wanted to give them a chance to live again. So I asked someone who was the same age and same sex to hold the photo so that you would psychologically think, oh, that's the little girl that's holding her own photo, but it wasn't. And so for the most recent exhibition, I actually cut the photos in the picture. So I cut like this part and then this part. And I don't know if you can see my cursor. And so that the photo sort of came off the page and it made it more three-dimensional. The next series I showed is a series called Fugue State. And this came about when I started realizing that my children had never made a physical print, that they were all their lives were on their cell phones. And I started wondering what their future would be. Would they sit down with their grandchildren and swipe through their phone? I'm happy to say now that my kids are actually shooting film. I gave my daughter my Pentax K1000 and she's taking a lot of photos with that. But what I did was I did a series of portraits and then I would take the negative and I would distress it with chemicals and then rescan it in negative to sort of give more attention to the color. And the thing about this is I only shot a few frames for each portrait, but in putting the chemicals onto those negatives, I was in fact destroying my own archive to make this point. This image was also shown at the National Portrait Gallery in London, and they said it was the first time they'd ever shown a portrait that had been intervened by the photographer. And then this came out by Peanut Press. The next series that I worked on when I was sitting at home during the pandemic and looking at my analog scans, I watched a hard drive with 20 years of analog scans disappear off my my desktop, and I realized that it had crashed. So I sent the hard drive off to be recovered, and a lot of the images came back corrupted. So I want to show you kind of what the corruption looked like. And I have no idea what image this was. But I was, of course, horrified that I had lost all of those images. And I have to just give every photographer a heads up that if everything is on a hard drive, even though you've got it backed up a gazillion ways, those hard drives aren't going to last forever. So, again, I say make prints. So I wanted to do something with these corruptions and to be able to talk about them. And so because I photographed so many portraits, I made silhouettes of portraits that I had made and then laid the silhouette on top of the corruption and then cyanotyped over it. So I'm mixing the digital corruption with historical processes and making portraits of something that could have been. And then this was that exhibition that Petra spoke about. The opening wall was a 16-foot wall with literally thousands of vernacular photos that had been donated to me by people all over the country. People sent me boxes of photos. And I organized all these photos like you would organize a photo album. So it started with babies, and then parents and babies, and then kids and teenagers. And then it went into graduations and weddings and parties and vacations. So that was a huge labor of love to put that all together. This is the work from Fugue State. You can see that, and I had colorful vinyls on the wall. And then here are the other Fugue State Revisited, quite large. And then this was a piece that I did just for the show to really speak about what happens when we lose our photographic legacies. And this is called Mother. And it starts out describing different things about the mother. I remember her smile, I remember her pearls, I remember her hair, etc. And the last image says, I remember how much she loved me. And so many people started crying when they saw this because they had recently lost a parent. It was really wonderful that I got a space to create this piece. Another piece that I did for the show was I worked with another artist, and we created a phone that dialed into the past so that you could dial a number and you would find a photo with one of us telling the story of something in our past. And then I finished the exhibition with a film, which if I can get to work tonight, I will show you at the end. So what's next? I am really having fun working with landscape, but moving things around and inverting things. And my most recent interest is really merging the analog and the digital world together and using historical processes over digital prints. And and I hadn't worked a lot in landscape before, so that's been really interesting too. So to live a creative life, we must lose our fear of being wrong. If there's a single thing that you remember from what I've said today, let it be that being an artist is not just about what happens when you're in the studio. It's the way you live, the people you choose to love, the way you love them, the way you vote, the words that come out of your mouth, the size of the world you make for yourself, your ability to influence things you believe in, your obsession, your failures. All of these components will become the raw material for the art you make. And that's from a lecture by Teresita Fernandez. And I don't think I can get this to work, so I'm going to get out of there. And let's see here. Get out of there, and I'm going to try to find my video. And I'm going to stop share and then go back in. Okay. Okay. And sorry about this, might take a second. So this is a very surreal film about the burden of remembering. So that's it. And I'm happy to answer any questions or let you go to bed. Any questions?
I'll say something.
Okay.
This is Matt Johnson. First of all, I was just transfixed throughout that whole everything that you've showed. I'm just kind of emotional, actually. And excuse me, but thank you for your great, presentation. And I'm just looking forward to watching it again. And so I don't really have any questions, but that was
Oh,
really
thank you, Matt.
powerful.
That means a
Thank you.
lot. I appreciate that. Most of us work in isolation and you just don't know how your work affects anyone. So it's nice to hear that.
So
I
which-
love that film, Aline.
Yeah, I definitely want to make more. But
Yeah, that film was pretty wild. So,
yeah, it's definitely a nod to Buñuel in there with the ice scene.
Which lake are you at in Massachusetts?
Called Long Pond, and it's near Plymouth.
Oh, okay. Yeah, my uncle had a place in Charlton near Worcester on a lake.
Yeah, there's a lot of lakes in
Yes,
Massachusetts.
there are.
Eileen, thank you for your presentation tonight. Lots of thought-provoking stuff. Earlier, you said that you were holding back on a project until you were ready for a book. How do you know when you're ready for a book?
Getting a book it's kind of like a little death, because you kind of have to stop making work for that project unless you are going to make a whole other book. But it's kind of hard to say, okay, I'm going to stop making work right now and just focus on a book. But at some point, if you want a book, you have to do that. But everyone should have, books are all different sizes and shapes now, but a significant book, you should have at least 100 photos for. And you should have, you can be thinking about how you want to articulate the work, who you want to have write for you, what the subject is, who is your audience. There's just a lot to think about. But that's why I really believe that the best work takes a long time to make. And because you're talking to yourself the whole time you're making work. I was lucky to have a book that was just on portraiture, so I could put in all these different series. But the book world is so creative right now. I think it's just another incredible outlet. And we could all be making amazing zines that cost nothing, but we're still being creative and getting our work out. So I don't know if I answered that well enough, Scott, but it is really hard to say, okay, I'm going to stop now, because usually we're passionate about a subject and it's really hard to say, okay, it's ending because I'm putting it in book form. But that's why it's been 30 years and I haven't stopped making work for that project.
That was a helpful answer. If I can follow up with a second question, how likely are you, or how often do you pull in another person or different people to help you edit a book, or do you prefer to do all of your own editing?
I'm a pretty severe editor of my own work, but getting a good editor can completely change the book. We don't know everything, and to get another set of eyes on something. And another thing to think about is to make it with a Meg cloud. Or do you know what Meg cloud is? It's it's a site where you can make small books for next to nothing. And you can get your book, you can get your work into a book form and start to see the sequencing and the layout, and you're not spending a lot of money. A lot of people start off by putting their books in MegCloud form, and then it moves into sort of a bigger publication. But yes, if you have someone, you know, a good photo editor can really transform a book too. So if you have someone, definitely use them.
Thank
We
you
do-
very much.
Yeah, we get very precious about our work, and we don't always want to hear what other people say.
No, we don't.
I just wanted to share that I really, really appreciated your presentation and going on that journey through your work with you, and how very special that you're working with family as well. And that last, I'm still kind of choked up, that film, having just had a couple of losses in my family. I understand the burden of memory, but and the beauty of it. And I just think it's really lovely the way that you get to revisit working with your mother through your series, and also enjoy the humor that you shared together, and just really love your work and very
Oh,
much enjoyed this. Thank you.
You know, it's funny because I teach a lot. I'll be teaching a group of artists on the East Coast, and all their work is about nature. And it's like, I live in a city, so my work is never about nature. And it's just really interesting how much our place also informs the work we make.
Mhm.
I know that I'm just telling you something that's very obvious, but it took me a while to like, oh, that's why everyone's making work about nature, because they live in nature. So, but, well, thank you all. And I hope I get to see some of you this weekend. And I'm going to be giving lots and lots of ideas for making work, and then also helping you sort of navigate the journey. And I did want to say, if anyone did not get into the exhibition, that I get rejected to 90% of what I submit to. So, and it's so subjective. You know, I could juror something another day and I'm going to pick a completely different. Or, you know, another juror is going to be drawn to different things, and you should never take it personally, ever. If when I get rejected, I just move on and think, oh, I don't have to frame and ship that work. So just don't take it personally, because seeing what it is to be a juror, like it's, you know, there's so much work that should have been in the show. There just wasn't room for it. And that's another thing. There's so many amazing photographers out there now too. When I started out, they'd go, oh,
Mhm.
you got into a show. There were 35 submissions. Now there's like 3,500 submissions. So, you
Yeah.
know, anyway.
Well, Aline, it was a wonderful, wonderful lecture. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Yes, very
Yes,
nice.
thank you.
Yes, thank you.
All right, I'm going to head to bed. It's past midnight for me.
Yes.
Thank you.
Sweet dreams.
All
Good to
right.
see
See you
everyone.
tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 Bye. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.